Peace imperatives. President rule in Manipur provides an opportunity for peace. In Manipur, with the Bharatiya Janata Party unable to identify a successor to N. Biren Singh for the post of Chief Minister, and the Assembly not having been convened even since 6 months since its last sitting, President rule was imposed in the Assembly in the state with the Assembly under suspended animation. Since 2023, in any case, a number of central forces have been deployed with the Union Home Ministry in control over law and order, even as the strife that began as an ethnic conflagration in May 23 has shown no signs of easing, with President's rule being declared, even if it was for expedient reasons, and showcased an inability of the BJP and its allies in government to overcome the ethnic differences within the legislature and in the polity. The union government now has an opportunity to ease the tensions. It can also work on pressing issues such as the persisting displacement of over 60,000 people. Reports suggest that many among them still experience severe trauma and a loss of livelihoods which must be tackled by the government with alacrity. Alacrity. President rule also allows for the possibility of talks between representatives of the two communities on the conflict, especially those who are committed to peace. The legislatures can also play a role in this exercise of reconciliation. The other major issue is the militarization of civil society, with the burgeoning of armed groups among the two communities who have termed themselves as village volunteers. Reports suggest that many among them still experience severe trauma and loss of livelihoods, which must be tackled by the government with alacrity. The other major issue is the militarization of civil society with the burgeoning of armed groups among the two communities who have termed themselves as village volunteers, brandishing arms looted from constabularies. Earlier attempts to retrieve these weapons and bring the looters to face justice have not borne fruit. The militarization is the new ethnic conflict has been complicated by the expanded role of insurgents who were fighting the Indian state or were engaged in the Myanmar civil war. It would take a concerted effort by the government, armed forces, and civil society actors to identify the village volunteers, disarm them by using firm hand with incentives, and then work on ways to tackle the insurgents. The Biren Singh regime was incapable of doing this because of the perceived bias in leadership and Mr. Singh's tendency to stigmatize the Kukizo community as a whole, leading to complete distrust. Efforts must be taken to distance the government from the colored legacy, and the Home Ministry should work on a war footing to restore peace. Ideally, assembly elections would have been necessitated immediately considering the deep ethnic divisions within the legislature and its failures, but first it is imperative to extinguish the climate of the fear and reprehension from violent groups and restore the rule of law before elections. Catching a break, January's inflation drip is respite for households but risk a building up. A healthy winter harvest of vegetables reined in food inflation to a 5 month low of 6% in January, driving down to India's consumer price inflation to 4.3%, tantalizingly close to the 4% median target pursued by the RBI. For urban consumers, in fact, inflation eased to 3.9%, while rural consumers faced a much moderated 4.6% uptick in prices. This constitutes some relief for households, especially the urban middle class, which has been awaiting relief from food inflation and has pulled back on other spending. If inflation holds around this level for some time, this may have broader connotations for consumption and growth impulses gathering fresh steam. The RBI, which slashed interest rates last week in anticipation of declining inflation, must be relieved too, as per its own reckoning, with its quarter expected to average 4.4% inflation. There may be a minor uptick from January's 4.3% price rise over this month and March. On Thursday, citing inflation decline and RBI's projection of an average inflation of 4.2% in 2025-26, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman exuded confidence in Parliament that food prices will be under control this year, with farm output estimates suggesting a healthy uptick. Some dark clouds, however, loom over this benign inflation outlook, and that is expected to create more room for the central bank to cut rates further and support growth, with the rupee declining 4% against the US dollar so far in the second half of 24-25. Imported inflation can play spoil sport, particularly on fuels, edible oils, where imports constitute 60% of India's consumption needs. If commuting costs, which accounted for the highest chunk of households' non food spending in 23-24, and cooking fuel costs flare up along with the price of fats to fry one's meal, household budgets will be exacerbated afresh. Edible oil prices have been rising sharply for a few months already, with high global prices compounded by the center's decision to impose duties. They were up 15.6% in January, the highest in almost 3 years. Wholesale prices for edible oils jumped 33.1%, indicating there is likely more pass through of these costs in retail prices. Any weather shocks this coming summer and monsoon could undo food price gains. The RBI, which is seeking to curb volatility in the rupee, will be mindful of these risks and have retained a neutral monetary policy stance, may hold off on its growth pursuit if warranted. To alleviate price pressures, the government, after unveiling income tax cuts to boost middle class consumption, should be open to slashing indirect taxes, fuel levies, import duties, and GST as they affect all sections of society, including the most vulnerable. To alleviate price pressures, the government, after unveiling income tax cuts to boost middle class consumption, should be open to slashing indirect taxes, fuel levies, import duties, and GST as they affect all sections of society. With the rupee declining 4% against the dollar so far in the second half of 24-25, and imported inflation can play spoil sport, particularly on fuels and edible oils, where imports constitute 60% of India's consumption needs. If commuting cost, which accounted for the highest chunk of households' non-food spending in 23-24, and cooking fuel cost flare up along with the prices of fats to fry one's meal, household budgets will be exacerbated afresh. With some much needed steps in conflict ravaged Manipur have been initiated, the Government of India must leave no stone unturned in expediting the economic advancement of the region, making sincere efforts to get to the root of the conflict, paying heed to the legitimate concerns of the locals, and taking steps to integrate them into the mainstream are vital. Rather than coercive methods, a humanistic approach will help usher in peace and stability. Procrastination is an evil that leads to nothing being done, even in sensitive issues. It is the height of insensitivity that it took several months, severe displacement, and much horror before some attempt is being made to restore order. The challenge now is to swiftly bridge the deep trust deficit between communities. The central government has not responding in real time is what has also contributed to the escalation of violence, going by the manner in which the NB Singh government has handled the whole ethnic conflict. It goes to show how little it cared for its own people. It remains to be seen what difference the imposition of president rule make to the troubled state. The joint press conference between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Trump was largely a substance-less charade. It was dominated by Trump's uninterrupted bragging and misrepresentation on a host of issues. Mr. Trump belongs to that school of politics where the philosophy is it's my way or the highway. The illegal immigration issue was glossed over. In this era of asymmetric warfare, where lighter and nimbler drones have come into prominence, having controversial, sophisticated fighter jets is nothing but a white elephant. It is a political gift to the struggling manufacturer. The idea of pouring India's hard-earned money into the bottomless pit is financially imprudent. It was dominated by Mr. Trump's uninterrupted bragging and misrepresentation on the host of issues. Mr. Trump belongs to that school of politics where the philosophy is it's my way or the highway. The illegal immigration issue was glossed over in this era of asymmetric warfare where lighter and nimbler drones have come into prominence. Having a controversial, sophisticated fighter jet is nothing but a white elephant. It is a political gift to a struggling manufacturer. The idea of pouring in India's hard earned money into a bottomless pit is financially imprudent. Dealing with China's weaponization of e supply chains. In mid January this year, news emerged of China preventing travel by its citizens working as engineers and technicians in Foxconn facilities in India. It was reported that those already in India were being recalled and the restrictions extended to curbs of exports of critical specialized manufacturing equipment over which China has a monopoly, while Foxconn has reportedly scrambled to bring in Taiwanese workers to fill the gap in manpower. It is the stoppage of specialized equipment that is crippling. Apple Foxconn remains critical to India's ambitions of becoming a global manufacturing power, and therefore, such strangulation will affect the larger objective. The zero-sum game measures by China expand geopolitical competition with India to regulations on flow of capital and other factors of production, fully cognizant of its dominance in advanced machinery and a well-trained workforce in tightly integrated global electronics production. China intends to also curb the tacit transfer of knowledge from Chinese technicians to their Indian counterparts on the assembly line. Combined with the disruptions on account of non-availability of specialized equipment, China has sought to weaponize its strategic location in the network of supply chains to slow down production in India and place itself in an advantageous negotiating position. The growing trade tensions between China and the West, specifically the United States, along with COVID-19 related disruptions, have led many global corporations to adopt a China plus one diversification strategy to future proof themselves. India has been in the forefront to seek benefits from this move, along with countries such as Vietnam and Mexico. Given the scale and development trajectory of India's manufacturing sector bearing potential similarities to that of Chinese experience, Beijing realizes the need to limit the rise of its geopolitical rival and also remind global corporations of its own indispensability to the production ecosystem. Over the last few years, the Indian government, in coordination with the state governments, has pulled all out steps to entrench Apple Foxconn's investment in the southern part of the country. The efforts bore fruit in 23 with the assembling of iPhone 15 models of Foxconn facility at Sungu Chhatram, Tamil Nadu, along with another line of Tata Electronics plant in Hosur, Karnataka. In the fiscal year ending March 24, Apple assembled 14 billion worth of iPhones in India through contract manufacturers Foxconn, Pegatron, and Tata Electronics. In 24, for the first time, iPhone 16 Pro models were assembled by Foxconn in India. State governments in South India have prioritized Apple Foxconn in their pursuit of investments. The conferment of the Padma Bhushan on the Yung Liu, chairman of Foxconn in 24, further underscores the company's importance for India. It appears that the emphasis has been replicating Apple's symbolic relationship with China. Large scale electronics manufacturing, especially of smartphones, is one of the major pillars of the Make in India program. The production linked incentive scheme, which was launched first in the electronics industry in 2020, has witnessed increased allocations by the central government, a sum of 8,800 crore in the union budget this year, rising from 6,000 crore in the Union Budget 24-25. A recent news report revealed that over three financial years from 22-23 to 24-25, Apple's contract manufacturers Foxconn, Pegatron, and Tata Electronics have cumulatively closed to 6,600 crore out of the total disbursed amount of 8,700 crore under the PLI scheme. In addition, the Union Budget 25 has completely removed basic custom duties on mobile phone components such as printed circuit boards, camera modules, connectors, and sensors, as also different capital goods machinery for use in the manufacture of lithium ion batteries for mobile phones. It is notable that China's zero sum action happened in just a few months after the thaw in India China ties posed the patrolling agreement in October 24 to end the 4 year long military standoff between the two armies in eastern Ladakh. Economic necessity visible in Indian dependence on China for components and machinery is believed to have hastened the negotiations process. This illustrates how India China relations do not necessarily hinge on stable boundary as geopolitical competition between both sides is only bound to get more acute in the future. There are no easy solutions for India in the short term, so it needs to involve both Apple and Foxconn to negotiate with China for easing Beijing's latest measures. Given that these corporations have stake in both countries, their involvement could possibly help India's case. However, this should also serve as another opportunity to hasten the process of future proving in terms of human resources, components, and specialized machinery. It needs to be kept in mind that India is still largely a center of financial assembly of smartphones. For a well rounded and holistic manufacturing ecosystem that includes production of various components, ancillary industries need to be incentivized and scaled up. National Manufacturing Mission for a small, medium, and large industries announced in the Union Budget is a good step, but it needs credible financial muscle that leads to the development of clusters for technological knowledge sharing, on site training for workers, which includes tacit sharing of knowledge on the assembly line, needs to be complemented and augmented with industry specific specialization in skill development programs. Shackled in the land of free. Vice President questions involvement of CGI in executive appointments. Dhankar says executive governance by judicial decree is a constitutional paradox that the largest democracy cannot afford any longer. Vice President Dhankar on Friday questioned the legal rationale behind Chief Justice of India being involved with executive appointments. Panda to head the 31 member select a panel on IT bill. The Lok Sabha committee of the Lok Sabha, which was to examine the income tax bill, was constituted with BJP MP Baijant Jay Panda appointed as the chairman of the panel. The committee will have 31 MPs, including 17 from the ruling NDA, comprised 14 from the BJP. Crisis in Manipur highlights centre's failure opposition. CRPF to probe Manipur fratricide urged personnel to contact helpline. Local militant recruitment down in Kashmir. Agents driving terror activities. Madras High Court asked government to preserve harmony atop religious hill in Tamil Nadu. More deported Indians to land in Amritsar. Trump targets defense sales, offers F-35 jets. US India US bilateral trade to be $500 billion by 2030. Trump ruffles feathers with mediation, offers to ease India China tension. Modi shared concerns about Bangladesh with Trump Foreign Secretary. Leaders do not discuss personal matters, Modi on Adani issue. Congress accuses Modi of covering up Adani's US bribery allegations. Maharashtra government forms 7-member panel to look into forced conversions. India may review Singapore's call for raising flight quota. It has also sought not to access more Indian airports. Several countries have made such requests, but government has been reluctant to accept the demands, fearing loss of passengers for Indian airlines. Brinda Karat urges Supreme Court judge to reconsider remarks on freebies. Said the recent remark on freebies by the Supreme Court Judge B.R. Gavai failed to recognize the struggle of India's laboring class for survival in the face of rampant unemployment, precarious nature of work, and low wages. In an open letter to Justice Gavai, Karat urged him to reconsider his comments as they could prejudice social opinion against those receiving social benefits. AP tribal hamlet celebrates freedom from darkness 78 years after independence. Calcutta High Court allows RSS to hold rally in Bengal district. Modi, Shah and Rahul set to meet on Monday to choose next CEC. Wholesale inflation almost unchanged at 2.31% in January. Reciprocal tariffs by US may not hurt India much, says GTRI. Reliance consumer buys sachet Pioneer Velvet. TikTok returns to Apple, Google App Store after Trump's reprieve. TikTok returned to Apple and Google App Stores in US a month after new security law forced its removal. Taiwan vows more investment in US as Trump chips tariffs loom. Russian attack on Chernobyl lead to outrage. No radiation detected. Hamas keeps ceasefire hopes alive by releasing names of the three hostages. Will meet Putin only after agreeing to a common plan with Trump-Zelensky. Bangladesh will have a new political party, interim government officials informs Ireland envoy. And the sports are Aces Awards goes to Best State for Promotion of Sport, Madhya Pradesh. India ready to host 2036 Olympics, says Home Minister Shah. India US to double bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030. US pushes for more defense deals, offers F-35 fighter jet. India and US agreed to negotiate the further first segment of trade agreement with looking to increase energy purchases from US to address US President Donald Trump's concerns about the US trade deficit with India as Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Trump for bilateral discussions in Washington. The United States will increase military sales to India by many billions of dollars starting this year, President Donald Trump said on Thursday at a joint press conference with Prime Minister Narendra Modi while also offering India's most advanced military platform, the F-35 fifth generation fighter jet. Manipur police to step up crackdown on extortion rackets, empowering people to choose end of life medical care. Farmer leaders center hold positive talks, plans to meet again on February 22. BJP to remain Mohalla clinics as Ayushman Arogya Mandirs. New Congress in charges in 13 states and 4 UTs. Places of Worship Act SP leader moves Supreme Court for effective execution. So the Teesta Dam and a long shadow of climate change. On January 27, 2025, an expert committee constituted by MOEFCC recommended the proposal to rebuild the Teesta Tree Dam on the Teesta Tree River in Sikkim. In October 23, a powerful glacial lake outburst GLOF from the South Luhansk Lake had decimated the dam and its hydroelectric power generation facility. The waters also carried debris from the dam forward like a fluid battering ram, highlighting the damage further downstream. In all, over 1,100 people were killed, while more than 80,000 people in 4 districts were affected. It became clear later that a moraine on the South Luhansk Lake's flank suffered a slope failure, weakening the terminus. The failure also sent rocks tumbling into the lake, generating a strong ripple. The outlet subsequently gave away, with satellite data indicating that around 50 billion liters of water had spilled into the valley. The event also set off multiple landslides about 30 to 40 kilometers downstream. As global warming and particulate matter, especially black carbon, also known as soot, accelerate the melting of Himalayan glaciers, as global warming and particulate matter, especially black carbon, also known as soot, accelerate the melting of Himalayan glaciers, more runoff is pooling into new lakes or adding into the existing ones. The rate of melting is inversely proportional to the volume, so as the glaciers shrink, they melt faster. A report by Central Water Commission of the last year found that the number of glacial lakes and other water bodies in the Himalayan region had become 10.8% more numerous between 2011 to 2024, and that their combined surface area had increased by 33% in the same period. The South Luang Lake itself was formed in the early 1960s and grew 167 acres by 23. Glacial retreat has also been known to destabilize extent geological formations and create new sources of risk. Against this background, the expert committee's decision to recommend the rebuilding of Tista Tree Dam is worrisome. As the Hindu has reported, the committee's decision was motivated by the fact that Tista Tree Dam was successful and commercially viable, and its power generating equipment was largely intact following the GLOF. Environmental activists and hydrology experts alike have expressed misgivings about large hydroelectric power projects in the Himalaya and have questioned new design green clearance. Teesta 3 have been a subject of several public interest litigations, asking for it to be scrapped because of its location, earthquake and landslide prone area, issues in techno-economic clearance, its non-compliance with 1996 notification to have Sikkim hold 51% equity, and alleged corruption. According to the committee, Teesta 3.2.0 is to be built with concrete alone rather than the concrete and rocks as before, to have a spillway nearly three times more voluminous, and to have an early warning system for flooding. The facility's new design is reportedly based on a worst case scenario modeled by IMDs with the maximum possible rain in the next century in the region. But one of the hallmarks of climate change is that it is a risk multiplier. If a slope failure of the South Luang Lake had occurred without there being a lake, there is unlikely to have been a flood. Likewise, if the moraine had not collapsed, the gradual accumulation of water may have caused the overtopping to flow into the valley less violent than during the GLOF. The proliferation of glacial lakes, geological instability, dynamics of transient landscape features, and even the flux of atmospheric soot blowing it blowing in from industrial centers and the Gangetic Plains all increase risk in a way that cannot reasonably be captured by this rainfall centric model. However, experts have already doubted whether the 2023 GLOF was triggered by heavy rain because local weather stations recorded only moderate rainfall or less in an area around the time. Professor Raghu Murtugunde has also written in The Hindu that relationships between the climate change and local rainfall are hard to characterize because the data for modeling is seldom sufficient. In his words, climate models are notoriously bad at properly capturing normal rainfall and worse at extreme ones. On January 30, 2025, an international team including experts from the Indian Institute of Technology Bhubaneswar and the Indian Institute of Science Bengaluru, the Indo-Tibetan Border Police and the government of Sikkim published a comprehensive assessment of the GLOF. Among other things, they wrote prevailing GLOF modeling and assessment approaches insufficiently account for processes of erosion and sediment transport as well as hill slope channels interactions such as riverbank collapses and landslides triggered by toe undercutting as well as impact of sediment transport on local bed elevations and hence water levels. The commercial viability of Teesta 3 pre-GLOF speaks of India's soaring power demand and pressing need to produce it somewhere, but since climate change multiplies risk everywhere, consequences should be weighed. The production in specific locales should be weighed against the consequences. The social security of the region's residents have to be improved accordingly so that in the event of a disaster, they are able to piece their lives back together without slipping on any social health or economic indicators. That the facility was commercially viable is an insufficient cost to restore it. Instead, the decision should be made within the framework of priorities that need to minimize risk to locals. Any The cost of these measures should be included in dam's hydroelectric power tariff rather than externalizing it in the determination of commercial viability. Anything else would be unsustainable by definition. So that's all for today. See you in the next one.